300 miles from the nearest cell tower, Maya Chen stood in the heart of the Olympic National Forest, watching her husband Eric pour the last foundation stone of what would become the most talked-about structure in modern history. Just 18 months ago, they were burned-out software engineers drowning in Seattle's tech bubble, their marriage cracking under the pressure of 80-hour weeks and endless screen time. Maya had been Google's youngest lead architect before she walked away. Eric had designed security systems for the Pentagon before he burned his clearance badge in their apartment sink. Now, deep in the ancient Douglas firs, they were building something that defied every law of physics and engineering Maya had ever learned. The house seemed to breathe. The walls pulsed with a soft, living light that came from no electrical source. Plants grew 3 times faster in its presence. Water stayed pure without filtration, and the government satellites that had been circling overhead for the past 2 weeks suggested their little experiment had caught some very dangerous attention. What had they accidentally discovered in these woods, and why were black helicopters now landing just beyond the tree line? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya pressed her palm against the nearest wall of their half-finished home, feeling the gentle vibration beneath her fingertips. The sensation still amazed her after 3 months of working with the strange material they'd found buried in the forest floor. It had started as an accident, Eric's shovel striking something crystalline while digging their septic system. What they'd uncovered looked like ordinary quartz, but when Maya touched it, the crystal had responded to her bioelectric field in ways that contradicted everything she knew about inorganic matter. "The resonance frequency is increasing again," Eric called from inside, his voice carrying an edge of concern. He emerged from the structure, tablet in hand, displaying readings from their makeshift monitoring system. "Whatever's causing the luminescence is getting stronger. Look at these energy patterns." Maya studied the wavelength data, her mind automatically translating the information into computational models. The patterns were too organized to be random, too complex to be natural. "It's responding to external stimuli," she murmured. "But what kind of stimuli travels through 300 miles of forest?" Their answer came in the form of a low, mechanical thrumming that made the crystalline walls pulse brighter. Through the canopy above, Maya caught glimpses of matte black aircraft circling in formation. These weren't the Park Service helicopters they'd seen during their first weeks in the wilderness. "How did they find us?" Eric asked, but Maya was already calculating probabilities. Thermal signatures, satellite reconnaissance, electromagnetic anomalies, any number of detection methods could have pinpointed their location. "We need to document everything," she said, pulling out her waterproof notebook. For months, they'd been recording their observations by hand, old-school documentation that couldn't be hacked or remotely accessed. The crystal formations beneath their home seemed to exist in a state of constant evolution, growing in response to human presence and intention. When Maya focused her thoughts on specific architectural needs, the material would gradually reshape itself. When Eric visualized structural reinforcements, crystalline supports would emerge overnight. The helicopters were landing now, their rotors whipping the forest floor into dust devils of pine needles and debris. Maya counted 4 aircraft, military-grade by the sound of their engines. Through the trees, she could see figures in tactical gear disembarking. "Remember what we agreed," Eric said quietly, reaching for her hand. "No matter who they are or what they want, we don't reveal the full extent of what we've learned." Maya nodded, but her scientist's mind was already racing through implications. If their discovery could revolutionize construction, energy production, and sustainable living, why would anyone want it buried? Unless the technology threatened existing power structures, oil companies, traditional construction conglomerates, governments dependent on resource scarcity. The first visitors appeared at the edge of their clearing, 3 individuals in dark suits completely inappropriate for wilderness terrain, flanked by soldiers whose insignia Maya didn't recognize. The lead figure, a woman with silver hair and calculating eyes, approached with the measured pace of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Dr. Chen, Mr. Lindqvist, the woman called, somehow knowing their names despite their off-grid isolation. I'm Director Patricia Walsh, Department of Emerging Technologies. We need to discuss your recent architectural innovations. Maya felt the crystalline walls behind her pulse more intensely, as if responding to the tension in the air. Whatever they'd stumbled upon in these ancient woods, it was bigger than sustainable living or escaping modern life's pressures. They'd accidentally uncovered something that powerful people considered dangerous enough to track across 300 miles of wilderness. The real question was whether Maya and Eric would be allowed to leave their forest paradise alive, or if their dream of a simpler life was about to become a nightmare of government secrets and corporate espionage. The morning mist clung to the valley like a secret as Maya stepped onto the wooden deck, her bare feet silent against the reclaimed cedar planks. 3 months had passed since she and Eric had declared their cabin officially complete, though both knew that places like this were never truly finished. The structure seemed to breathe with the forest around it, solar panels catching the first rays of dawn while the micro-hydro generator hummed its quiet song beside the creek. She wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, savoring the steam that rose between her fingers. The blend was nothing fancy, just beans from the co-op in town, but it tasted different here. Everything did. Even the air carried flavors she'd never noticed during her 12 years of corporate servitude: pine resin, wildflower honey, the clean bite of mountain snow that never fully melted from the peaks above. "Systems running at 112% efficiency this morning," Eric called from inside, his voice carrying that note of wonder that still surfaced whenever he checked their energy readings. Maya smiled, remembering how his colleagues at Microsoft had teased him about playing with toys during their final months in Seattle. If only they could see those toys now. The breakthrough had happened almost by accident, the way most revolutionary discoveries did. Eric had been tinkering with their battery storage system, frustrated by the inconsistent power draw from their various appliances, when he'd noticed something odd in the data patterns. The batteries weren't just storing energy, they were somehow amplifying it, creating output levels that shouldn't have been possible, according to everything they'd learned about thermodynamics. Maya had been skeptical at first. Her engineering background made her instinctively distrust anything that seemed too good to be true, but the numbers didn't lie, and after weeks of testing and retesting, they had to accept the impossible. Their combination of materials and design had stumbled onto something that could change everything. "Maya." Eric's voice had lost its earlier excitement, replaced by something that made her stomach tighten. "You need to see this." She found him hunched over his laptop at their kitchen table, his dark hair falling across his forehead in the way that usually made her want to brush it back. Not this time. His jaw was set in a line she recognized from their most stressful product launches, when executives demanded impossible deadlines and programmers worked through the night on nothing but caffeine and determination. "What is it?" He turned the screen toward her, revealing what looked like a satellite image of their property. The resolution was crisp enough to show individual trees, the silver thread of their creek, even the solar array they'd installed just last week. In the corner, a timestamp indicated the photo had been taken yesterday. "I found this embedded in our system logs," Eric said quietly. "Someone's been watching us." Maya sank into the chair beside him, her coffee forgotten. "Watching us how? That looks like—" "Commercial satellite imagery, yeah. High-resolution stuff. The kind you can't just buy online." His fingers flew across the keyboard, bringing up lines of code that scrolled past faster than Maya could follow. "But that's not the worst part. Look at this." The code resolved into a network traffic analysis, showing data packets flowing to and from their property. Most of it was normal. Weather updates, email, Eric's occasional gaming sessions, but buried among the routine traffic were threads that didn't belong. Uploads they hadn't initiated, downloads to servers they'd never heard of. "Someone's been copying our system data," Maya said, the words tasting like metal in her mouth. "The energy readings, the battery configurations, everything." Eric nodded grimly. "For at least 6 weeks. Based on what I can trace, maybe longer." Maya stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked their small valley. The morning mist was burning off now, revealing the meadow where they'd planned to expand their garden next spring. Everything looked exactly as it had 10 minutes ago, but the sense of sanctuary that had drawn them to this place was cracking like ice in spring sun. Who would want this information? She asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Their discovery wasn't just scientifically significant, it was economically threatening. Free, sustainable energy that anyone could build with the right knowledge would upend industries worth trillions of dollars. Could be anyone, Eric said, but his voice suggested he was thinking along the same lines. Energy companies, government agencies, research institutions. Hell, maybe all of them. Maya watched a hawk circle high above the meadow, riding thermals with effortless grace. They'd come here to escape the corporate games, the politics, the constant pressure to innovate faster and cheaper than the competition. They'd wanted simplicity, sustainability, a life that didn't require compromising their values for profit margins. Instead, they'd built something that might be the most valuable discovery of the century. "We need to decide what we're going to do about this," she said finally. Eric's reflection appeared in the window beside hers, his expression as troubled as her own. "Yeah, we do." The morning sun filtered through the cabin's solar glass panels, casting geometric patterns across Maya's workbench. She hunched over her laptop, fingers dancing across keys worn smooth from countless hours of coding. The algorithms she'd been perfecting for their energy storage system were finally beginning to cooperate, their efficiency curves climbing toward theoretical impossibility. Eric emerged from the kitchen, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee, the rich aroma cutting through the scent of pine that perpetually filled their home. "Any breakthroughs with the lithium substitute?" he asked, settling the mug beside her elbow. "Better than that." Maya's voice carried a tremor of excitement she couldn't suppress. "The crystalline matrix I've been growing isn't just storing energy, it's amplifying it. Look at these numbers." She turned the screen toward him, revealing data that made Eric's engineering background sit up and take notice. The energy density readings were triple what conventional batteries could achieve, and the degradation rate was virtually non-existent. "That's impossible," he whispered, but his eyes were already accepting what the data showed. "Maya, do you understand what this means?" Before she could answer, a low rumble echoed across the valley. Both of them froze, listening to the unfamiliar sound of engines approaching their isolated sanctuary. Living 30 miles from the nearest paved road meant visitors were rare, and unannounced visitors were unheard of. Eric moved to the window, his body tensing as he spotted the convoy winding up their dirt access road. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows, moving with the purposeful precision of people who weren't here for a social call. "Government plates," he muttered, recognizing the subtle markings that most people would miss. "Maya, back up everything, now!" Her fingers flew over the keyboard, uploading encrypted files to servers scattered across 3 continents. Years of working in Silicon Valley had taught them both that information was the most valuable currency in the world and the most dangerous to possess. The vehicle stopped in a perfect formation around their cabin, disgorging men and women in dark suits that looked absurdly out of place against the wilderness backdrop. Their leader, a woman with silver hair and eyes like winter frost, approached the front door with measured steps. Maya's hand found Eric's as the knock echoed through their home. 3 sharp raps, polite but commanding. "Dr. Chen, Mr. Larson." The woman's voice carried through the door with crisp authority. "My name is Director Sarah Voss. I'm with the Department of Energy's Advanced Research Division. We need to discuss your recent work." Eric opened the door, keeping his body positioned protectively in front of Maya. "I'm sorry, but we're not working on anything that would interest the Department of Energy. We're just trying to live sustainably." Director Voss smiled, but it never reached her eyes. "May I come in? I think you'll find our conversation mutually beneficial." "Do we have a choice?" Maya asked, stepping up beside Eric. "There's always a choice, Dr. Chen. But some choices have more pleasant consequences than others. They found themselves seated around their handmade dining table, the rustic wood seeming to mock the sterile professionalism of their uninvited guests. Director Voss declined coffee, but accepted water, her movements economical and precise. Theoretical being the key word, Eric interjected. We left that world behind for a reason. Yet, here you are, living completely off-grid in a home that somehow maintains full power despite having solar capacity that should barely cover your basic needs. Director Voss's eyes swept across their cabin, taking in the subtle signs of technology that shouldn't exist. Your power consumption patterns are fascinating, Dr. Chen. Either you violated several laws of physics, or you've made a breakthrough that changes everything. Maya felt her mouth go dry. They'd been so careful, but apparently not careful enough. The smart grid monitoring systems she'd helped design in her previous life were now being used to track her own energy signature. Even if we had made some minor improvements to battery technology, Maya said carefully, I fail to see why that would require a federal response. Minor improvements don't create energy signatures that our satellites can detect from orbit, Director Voss replied. What you've created threatens to destabilize entire sectors of the global economy. That makes it a matter of national security. The words hung in the air like a physical threat. Eric's hand found Maya's under the table, his thumb tracing reassuring circles across her knuckles. What exactly are you proposing? Eric asked. Partnership, Director Voss said smoothly. Your research, properly funded and directed, could serve the greater good. Clean energy for military applications, grid storage that could revolutionize infrastructure. Applications you haven't even considered yet. And if we're not interested in partnership? Director Voss stood, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from her suit. Then we'll have to explore other options for ensuring this technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands. After all, you wouldn't want something this dangerous to be misused by foreign agents or terrorist organizations. The morning mist clung to the valley floor as Maya crept through the underbrush, her boots silent against the damp earth. She'd been tracking the intruder's path for an hour, following broken twigs and disturbed moss back toward the ridge. Eric had wanted to come with her, but someone needed to stay with the house and their equipment. The solar array incident had shaken them both more than either wanted to admit. A glint of metal caught her eye. Wedged between two granite boulders was a small device, no bigger than a matchbox, its surface covered in a fine mesh of electronics she didn't recognize. Maya photographed it from multiple angles before carefully extracting it with a stick, dropping it into a sealed sample bag they used for soil testing. The device felt warm through the plastic, almost alive. Whatever it was, it hadn't been there long. Her satellite phone buzzed. Eric's voice crackled through the static. Maya, you need to get back here, now. She found him standing in their laboratory shed, staring at his computer screen with an expression she'd never seen before, part fascination, part terror. The morning's data from their geothermal sensors scrolled across the monitor in patterns that made no sense. Look at this, Eric said, pointing to a series of readings. These aren't random fluctuations. There's a pattern here, Maya. The thermal signatures are forming geometric shapes underground. Maya leaned closer, her breath catching. The data showed clear evidence of artificial structures beneath their property, vast chambers and tunnels that extended far deeper than any natural cave system. How is this possible? The geological surveys showed nothing unusual. Either those surveys missed something massive or— Eric paused, running his hands through his hair. Or someone made sure they missed it. Maya pulled out the device she'd found, setting it on the workbench. Speaking of things that shouldn't be here. Eric examined it under their microscope while Maya pulled up the morning's security footage on her tablet. The cameras had captured more than she'd initially noticed. Shadows moving with purpose, figures who knew exactly where to avoid the motion sensors. These weren't random trespassers or curious hikers. Maya. Eric's voice was tight. This isn't just a listening device, it's actively interfacing with our systems. Look at these connection points. They're designed to tap into the specific type of sensors we're using. That's impossible. We custom-built most of our monitoring equipment. Exactly. Someone would need our exact specifications to create this. Eric met her eyes. Someone's been watching us for a long time. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. Their move to the wilderness hadn't been the escape they'd thought. Someone had been tracking their work from the beginning, possibly since their days in Silicon Valley. She thought about the job offers that had seemed too good to be true, the investors who'd appeared out of nowhere, wanting to fund their sustainable technology research. Had any of it been legitimate? A distant rumble echoed through the valley, too regular to be thunder. Maya rushed to the window, scanning the sky until she spotted it, a black helicopter approaching from the east, flying low and fast. It wasn't marked with any identification she could see. "They're not being subtle anymore," Eric said, joining her at the window. The helicopter circled their property twice before settling into a hover directly over their house. The downdraft from its rotors sent their solar panels rattling and scattered debris across their carefully tended garden. After a long moment that felt like a threat, it banked sharply and disappeared over the western ridge. Maya's hands were shaking as she reached for their emergency kit. "We need to document everything and get it somewhere safe." They worked quickly, copying files to encrypted drives, photographing the mysterious device, and gathering their most critical research data. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were already too late, that whatever game they'd unwittingly become part of was moving into its final phase. Maya stopped packing, the pieces clicking into place. "You think we stumbled onto something that was already known? Think about it. Our geothermal system is more sensitive than anything that's ever been used in this area. We might have accidentally uncovered evidence of something that was meant to stay hidden." The satellite phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through their urgent preparations. Maya stared at the device, knowing that almost no one had this number. After 4 rings, she answered. "Maya Chen?" The voice was calm, professional, with just a hint of an accent she couldn't place. "Who is this?" "Someone who believes you and Dr. Lindqvist have found something that doesn't belong to you. We'd like to discuss this reasonably before the situation becomes complicated." The line went dead, leaving Maya and Eric staring at each other in the sudden silence of their mountain sanctuary, which no longer felt safe at all. The sound of helicopters had become a constant background hum over the past 3 days, circling their property like mechanical vultures. Maya pressed her face against the kitchen window, watching the black aircraft sweep across the tree line for the 4th time that morning. The sight made her stomach clench with the same dread she'd felt when Eric first showed her the energy readings from their prototype. "They're not going away," she said, stepping back from the glass. Eric looked up from his laptop, where lines of code scrolled endlessly across the screen. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his usually steady hands trembled slightly as he reached for his coffee mug. He'd been working non-stop since their unwelcome visitors departed, trying to understand how their harmless sustainability project had evolved into something that apparently threatened billion-dollar industries. "The quantum resonance chamber is generating more power than it should be possible," he said, his voice hoarse. "According to everything we know about physics, this shouldn't work, but the numbers don't lie." Maya sat across from him, pulling her wool sweater tighter around her shoulders. The cabin that had felt like a sanctuary now felt exposed, vulnerable. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we've stumbled onto something we were never meant to find." Through the walls, they could hear the distant rumble of vehicles on the access road. More visitors, though these ones weren't bothering with the pretense of official business. Maya had counted at least 6 different cars since dawn, all with tinted windows, all driving slowly past their gate. Eric closed the laptop with a sharp snap. "I've been thinking about what Thompson said, about national security implications. What if our discovery doesn't just threaten energy companies? What if it threatens the entire economic structure that depends on scarcity?" The question hung between them like smoke. Maya had been asking herself the same thing, remembering how their simple geothermal system had gradually evolved into something far more complex. What started as an attempt to heat their home efficiently had become a dance with forces they barely understood. I found something else, Eric continued, pulling out a manila folder thick with printed documents. Remember how we thought the unusual mineral deposits on our land were just a lucky coincidence? I've been researching the previous owners. Maya leaned forward as Eric spread geological surveys and property records across the table. The papers were yellowed with age, some dating back decades. This land has changed hands 17 times in the past 40 years, Eric said, pointing to a chain of ownership documents. Every single time the buyers were shell companies or individuals who disappeared from public records within months of the purchase. A chill ran down Maya's spine that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Someone's been keeping this land away from development, or keeping people away from what's buried here. Eric pulled out a geological report from 1987. Look at this. The mineral composition isn't just unusual, it's unique. These crystalline formations exist nowhere else on Earth, at least nowhere else that's been officially documented. The helicopter noise grew louder, and through the window, Maya could see the aircraft descending toward their cleared meadow. This time, it didn't circle and leave. This time, it was landing. Eric. Her voice was barely a whisper. They moved to the window together, watching as figures in dark clothing emerged from the helicopter. 6 people, moving with military precision, carrying equipment cases and what looked unmistakably like weapons. Eric's hand found Maya's, squeezing tight. The back door. Now. They grabbed the laptop and the most crucial research files, stuffing everything into a hiking backpack that Maya kept ready by the door. The irony wasn't lost on her. All their preparation for surviving in the wilderness was now being used to survive their own species. The kitchen door splintered inward just as they slipped out the back of the cabin. Shouts erupted behind them, professional voices calling coordinates and search patterns. Maya and Eric ran for the tree line, their feet silent on the pine needle carpet they'd walked so many peaceful mornings. Behind them, their dream home was being systematically torn apart by people who saw their discovery not as a gift to humanity, but as a threat to be eliminated. They reached the dense forest just as flashlight beams began sweeping the clearing around their cabin. Eric pulled Maya deeper into the trees, following game trails they'd learned during their first winter here, when tracking deer had seemed like the biggest challenge they'd ever face. There's a cave system about 2 miles north, Maya whispered, her breath creating small clouds in the cold air. We can hide there until nightfall. As they climbed higher into the mountains that had once promised them freedom from the corporate world they'd fled, Maya realized they weren't running from their old life anymore. They were running for their new one, carrying the weight of a discovery that could change everything, if they lived long enough to share it. The drone circled overhead like a mechanical vulture, its whirring rotors cutting through the morning stillness. Maya pressed herself against the cabin wall, watching Eric frantically disconnect cables from their main power array. They had maybe minutes before whoever was operating that thing decided to take a closer look. The backup cells, Eric whispered, his hands working with practiced efficiency. If they scan the primary system, they'll see the energy signature. Maya's heart hammered as she remembered Dr. Chen's warning about corporate interest in breakthrough technologies. 3 days had passed since their video call, 3 days of looking over their shoulders and jumping at every unusual sound. Now their paranoia seemed justified. The drone banked left, descending toward their solar array. Maya could make out a camera gimbal on its underside, slowly panning across their property. Professional-grade equipment. This wasn't some curious neighbor or environmental surveyor. There. Eric sealed the final connection panel. Primary systems dark, running on conventional backup only. Maya grabbed his arm. The lab readings. Did you? Encrypted and uploaded to the secure server 2 hours ago. Eric's jaw was tight. If something happens to us, Chen will have everything. The implication hung between them like a loaded weapon. 3 years of meticulous work, of breakthrough discoveries that could reshape how humanity approached energy storage, now felt like a target painted on their backs. The drone completed another pass, then rose sharply and disappeared over the tree line. Maya counted to 60 before allowing herself to breathe normally. They're gone, she said, but Eric was already moving toward the workshop. No, they're just getting started. Inside the workshop, their monitoring equipment painted a disturbing picture. Eric pulled up the electromagnetic signature analysis from the past hour. Multiple devices had been scanning their property, not just the visible drone, but ground-penetrating radar and what looked like spectral analysis equipment. "They're mapping everything," Eric said, his voice hollow. "Power distribution, structural composition, even the mineral content of our soil." Maya studied the data streams, her software engineering background helping her pass the digital fingerprints. This level of sophistication. We're talking serious resources, government or major corporate. Does it matter which? She was about to respond when their perimeter alarm chimed. A vehicle was approaching on the access road. Maya switched to the security feed and felt ice flood her veins. 2 black SUVs, government plates. 4 people emerging, their movements coordinated and purposeful. The lead figure wore a charcoal suit that looked expensive even through the grainy camera feed. "Dr. Larson? Mr. Reeves?" The man's voice carried clearly through their external audio pickup. "I'm Director Walsh with the Department of Energy. We'd like to speak with you about your research." Maya and Eric exchanged glances. No warrant visible, but the implied authority was unmistakable. Maya made a quick decision and activated their emergency protocol, a dead man switch that would scrub sensitive data if they didn't check in every 12 hours. "Coming," she called back, buying time while Eric secured their most critical files. Director Walsh was younger than she'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of polished confidence that spoke of Ivy League schools and fast-track careers. His companions hung back, obviously security, but trying to appear casual. "Beautiful property," Walsh began, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Quite remote. Must be peaceful." "It was," Eric said evenly. Walsh chuckled. "Right to the point. I appreciate that. Look, we're here because your work has attracted some attention in certain circles. Breakthrough energy storage technology, revolutionary efficiency gains, the kind of innovation that could be disruptive." Maya kept her expression neutral. "Our research is purely theoretical at this stage. Dr. Chen seems to think otherwise." The words hit like a physical blow. Chen had promised discretion, but apparently that discretion had limits. Or perhaps she hadn't had a choice. "What do you want?" Maya asked. "Partnership," Walsh said smoothly. "The Department of Energy has significant resources. We could accelerate your research, provide funding, facilities, a team of world-class scientists. All we ask in return is exclusivity. And if we refuse—" Walsh's smile dimmed slightly. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is a generous offer. Federal backing, unlimited budget, your names on groundbreaking research that could transform the energy sector." Maya heard what he wasn't saying, the implicit threat beneath the polished words. She thought of their 3 years of careful work, of the discovery that had emerged from their unique combination of materials science and environmental necessity. The thought of handing it over to bureaucrats made her sick. "We need time to consider," she said. "Course, but not too much time." Walsh handed her a business card. "The window for voluntary cooperation has a tendency to close unexpectedly." After they left, Maya and Eric sat in their kitchen, staring at the card. Around them, their dream home felt suddenly fragile, like something that could be swept away by forces far beyond their control. "What do you think happened to Chen?" Eric asked quietly. Maya didn't answer. She was already planning their next move. The generator hummed to life at dawn, its quiet efficiency a stark contrast to the chaos in Maya's mind. She'd barely slept, her thoughts churning over David's warning and the weight of their discovery. The morning light filtering through their cabin windows felt different now, exposed, vulnerable. Eric emerged from the workshop, dark circles under his eyes telling her he'd spent the night running calculations. "I've been thinking about what David said," he began, accepting the coffee she offered, "about making our research disappear. And what if we do the opposite? What if we make it impossible to bury? Maya studied his face, recognizing the determined set of his jaw she'd fallen in love with years ago. You want to publish everything, not just publish. Distribute it so widely that no corporation or government could possibly contain it. Open source the entire design, upload it to every scientific database, every forum, every platform we can find. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Maya walked to the window, watching the wind turbines spin lazily in the morning breeze. Their little experiment had grown beyond anything they'd imagined when they first fled Silicon Valley's suffocating corporate culture. That's assuming we have enough time, she said quietly. David seemed to think. A distant rumble interrupted her thoughts. Not thunder. The sky was clear. Vehicle engines, multiple ones, growing closer. Eric was beside her in an instant, peering through the trees toward the access road they'd cut 3 years ago. That's not David's truck. 3 black SUVs emerged from the forest, moving with purpose down their winding drive. Maya's stomach dropped as she counted the vehicles, imagining how many people they might contain. The laptop, Eric said, already moving toward the workshop. All our research files. But Maya grabbed his arm. No time. Look. The SUVs had stopped, doors opening in coordinated precision. Men in dark suits emerged, their movements too fluid, too professional to be anything but military or intelligence. One gestured toward the cabin, while another pointed at the workshop. Back door, Maya whispered, her mind racing through escape routes they'd planned but never expected to use. The emergency cache. They'd hidden supplies throughout their property during their first paranoid year off-grid, old habits from their cybersecurity days when they'd learned to prepare for digital disasters. Now those same instincts might save their lives. They slipped out the rear of the cabin, using the workshop as cover while they made for the tree line. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she heard voices calling from the front of the property. Professional but insistent. Maya Chen. Eric Volkov. We'd like to speak with you. The voice carried an authority that made her skin crawl, too polite, too measured. These weren't local authorities following up on permits. They reached the old-growth pine, where Eric had waterproofed a storage container 2 summers ago. Inside, cache, encrypted drives, fake IDs they'd hoped never to need. Maya's hands shook as she shouldered the emergency pack. The research, she whispered, backed up on the drives, but we need internet access to distribute it properly. A crash echoed from the direction of their cabin, the front door being forced open. Maya winced, thinking of their carefully crafted home being violated by strangers who saw their work as a threat rather than hope. They moved deeper into the forest, following game trails Eric had mapped during his hunting expeditions. The thick canopy provided cover, but Maya knew it was temporary. If these people had found their location despite all their precautions, they likely had resources to track them through the wilderness. The Hendersons, Eric said suddenly. Their place is 12 miles northeast. They have satellite internet. Maya nodded, remembering the elderly couple who'd befriended them at the farmer's market. Retired academics who'd understand the stakes of suppressed scientific research. Behind them, she heard engines starting up again, then the unmistakable whir of drone rotors. Her blood chilled. These people weren't just corporate executives trying to buy them out. This was something much more serious. They pressed deeper into the forest, using every technique they'd learned about moving quietly through underbrush. Maya's tech-soft hands, now calloused from years of building and farming, gripped tree branches as she navigated the steep terrain. Maya. Eric's voice was barely audible. Whatever happens, the research gets out. Promise me. She met his eyes, seeing her own determination reflected there. They'd given up everything once before to build something meaningful. Now they were being asked to sacrifice it to protect corporate interests that prioritized profit over planetary survival. Together, she whispered back, we finish what we started. The drone sounds grew closer, mechanical buzzing that violated the forest's natural symphony. But Maya felt something she hadn't expected. Not just fear, but fierce protectiveness over their discovery. They'd stumbled onto something that could change everything, and now she understood why powerful people wanted it buried. That only made her more determined to set it free. The generator hummed to life, with a sound Maya had never heard before, a deep, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate through the earth itself. She and Eric exchanged glances as the frequency stabilized, their monitoring equipment displaying readings that shouldn't have been possible. "The output is 3 times higher than yesterday," Eric whispered, his voice barely audible over the thrumming. "But we haven't changed anything." Maya checked the seismic sensors they'd installed around the property. The needle jumped erratically, registering micro-tremors that radiated outward from their location in perfect concentric circles. It's not just generating power anymore. It's doing something to the ground itself. Through the cabin window, she watched the forest with growing unease. The trees swayed in patterns that defied the gentle morning breeze, their movements synchronized as if responding to an invisible conductor. Birds had gone silent. Even the ever-present buzz of insects had ceased. Eric's laptop chimed with an incoming satellite call. The screen flickered to life, revealing Dr. Sarah Chen's concerned face from her Berkeley office. Behind her, Maya could see other figures moving purposefully, people in suits who definitely weren't academics. "Maya, Eric, thank God you're answering. Listen carefully. You need to shut down your project immediately and leave your property, now." "Sarah, what's—" "There's no time to explain everything. 3 hours ago, seismic stations across the Pacific Northwest started detecting anomalous readings. The epicenter is your location, but the patterns don't match any known geological activity." Sarah's eyes darted nervously to someone off-camera. "The Department of Energy has classified your research. There are teams en route to your location." Maya felt ice in her veins. "What kind of teams?" "The kind that don't ask questions first." "Maya, what exactly have you two discovered out there?" Before she could answer, Eric grabbed her arm, pointing toward the access road. Dust clouds marked the approach of multiple vehicles moving fast. Through binoculars, Maya counted at least 6 black SUVs and what appeared to be a specialized equipment truck. "Sarah, they're already here," Eric said, his voice tight. "How long do we have?" "Maybe 10 minutes before they reach your cabin. Listen to me. Whatever technology you've developed, it's triggered something big. The readings we're seeing suggest you've tapped into a geothermal system, but the energy signature is unlike anything in the geological records." Maya's mind raced. The ancient petroglyphs they'd found, the unusual mineral deposits, the way their original design had evolved beyond their intentions. It all pointed to something they hadn't considered. They hadn't just built a revolutionary power source, they'd awakened something that had been dormant for centuries. "The indigenous stories about this land," Maya said suddenly. "The warnings about disturbing the earth spirits. What if they weren't mythology?" Eric was already moving, gathering their research data and backup drives. "Sarah, we're going to lose contact. Can you protect our work if we transmit it to you?" "I'll try, but my own communications are being monitored. Send what you can through the encrypted channel we set up for your peer review." The satellite connection began breaking up as the vehicles drew closer. Through the static, they caught fragments of Sarah's words: congressional hearing, suppressed research, national security implications. Maya started the data upload while Eric began the emergency shutdown sequence for their generator. The process would take precious minutes they didn't have. Outside, the unnatural humming was growing louder, and cracks had appeared in the stone foundation of their cabin. "The shutdown isn't working," Eric reported, sweat beading on his forehead. "The system has achieved some kind of autonomous state. It's drawing power from the source faster than we can disconnect it." The lead vehicles had reached the bottom of their driveway. Through the trees, Maya could see armed figures emerging, their movements coordinated and professional. These weren't government inspectors or even military personnel. They moved with the precision of private contractors. "We need to run. Now," she said, grabbing their emergency packs. Eric looked agonized as he watched their life's work continuing its inexorable process. The generator had become something beyond their control, tapping into geological forces that had remained untouched for millennia. We can't just leave it running. If the output continues increasing at this rate, if we don't leave now, we'll never get the chance to fix it, Maya interrupted. She could hear engines straining up their steep driveway, voices calling orders through radio static. They slipped out the back door as the first black SUV crested the hill. Maya's last glimpse of their sustainable dream home showed it vibrating visibly, windows rattling in their frames, while underground something ancient and powerful stretched toward wakefulness. The forest enveloped them as shouts erupted from the clearing behind. Their revolution had begun, but not in any way they had imagined. The morning sun cast long shadows through the pine trees as Maya crouched beside the solar array, her fingers tracing the modified circuitry that had changed everything. 3 weeks had passed since the corporate visitors left with their veiled threats, and the silence felt more ominous than any direct confrontation. Eric emerged from the workshop, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. The backup generator is ready. If they try to cut our power grid connection, we'll still have juice for the essential systems. Maya nodded, but her attention remained fixed on the sleek panels before her. Their breakthrough hadn't been intentional, just Maya's restless mind tinkering with quantum dot efficiency during those long winter nights. She'd managed to increase solar energy conversion by 40%, using materials that cost pennies to produce. What started as a personal project to reduce their carbon footprint had become something that could revolutionize global energy production. "Should have kept our mouths shut," she murmured, remembering the academic paper Eric had encouraged her to submit. The recognition had felt validating at first, but now she understood why certain technologies never reached the market despite their promise. A distant rumble made them both freeze. Through the trees, Maya spotted a convoy of black SUVs winding up their private road. Her stomach dropped as she counted at least 6 vehicles. "The workshop," Eric said, already moving. "Secure the prototypes." They had rehearsed this scenario dozens of times. Maya sprinted toward the house while Eric disappeared into his domain of 3D printers and fabrication equipment. She reached their hidden server room, a Faraday cage buried beneath the kitchen floor, and began uploading encrypted backups to distributed networks across 3 continents. The vehicle stopped 100 yards from the house, disgorging men in expensive suits, accompanied by others whose casual clothes couldn't quite conceal their military bearing. Maya recognized the lead figure immediately, Richard Blackwood, CEO of Titan Energy Consortium, one of the largest fossil fuel companies in the world. Through the window, she watched Blackwood approach with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. His silver hair caught the morning light as he gestured for his security team to spread out around the property. Maya activated their communication system, a mesh network independent of cellular or internet infrastructure, and sent a coded message to Dr. Sarah Chen at MIT, their only remaining ally in the academic world. If things went badly, Sarah would know to release the technical specifications they'd shared with her. The knock on their door came precisely at 9 o'clock. Eric had returned from the workshop, his face grim but determined. Together, they opened the door to find Blackwood flanked by 2 stone-faced men whose eyes never stopped moving. "Mr. and Mrs. Larson," Blackwood said, his voice carrying the polish of boardroom negotiations. "I apologize for the early visit, but we have urgent business to discuss." "Our property is private," Maya replied. "You're trespassing." Blackwood's smile never wavered. "I'm here to make you an offer that will solve all your problems. May we come in?" Eric stepped back reluctantly, and the 3 men entered their carefully crafted sanctuary. Blackwood's gaze swept over their hand-built furniture and recycled materials with barely concealed disdain. "Impressive work," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Living off-grid requires remarkable dedication. It would be tragic if external pressures forced you to abandon this peaceful existence." Maya felt Eric tense beside her. What do you want? Your cooperation. Blackwood reached into his jacket and produced a tablet, which he placed on their dining table. This contract transfers all intellectual property rights related to your solar efficiency breakthrough to Titan Energy. In exchange, you receive $20 million and our guarantee that you'll be left alone to continue your rustic lifestyle. Maya glanced at the screen, scanning legal language designed to bury her work forever. And if we refuse? Then we discuss less pleasant alternatives. Blackwood nodded toward the window, where his security team remained visible. Patents can be challenged, environmental permits can be revoked, building codes can be reinterpreted. The federal government takes a dim view of unlicensed power generation systems, especially those that might pose theoretical security risks. Eric moved closer to Maya, a united front against the pressure. You're talking about suppressing technology that could help millions of people. I'm talking about protecting existing economic structures from disruption, Blackwood corrected. Your innovation, while technically impressive, would destabilize energy markets worth trillions of dollars. The economic chaos alone would cause more suffering than your technology could ever prevent. Maya stared at the contract, weighing their options. $20 million represented more money than she'd ever imagined possessing, but accepting it meant abandoning everything she believed in. Refusing it, however, might mean losing not just their work, but their freedom, or worse. We need time to consider your offer, she said finally. Blackwood checked his watch. You have until sunset. Choose wisely, Mrs. Larson. Some decisions can't be undone. As the convoy disappeared down their mountain road, Maya and Eric stood in their violated sanctuary, understanding that their simple dream of sustainable living had become something far more dangerous. The modified signal booster hummed quietly in the corner of the workshop, while Maya paced between scattered circuit boards and half-assembled components. Eric had been transmitting their research data for 3 hours now, uploading everything to a network of environmental advocacy groups, independent scientists, and investigative journalists across the globe. The insurance policy Marcus had suggested felt both brilliant and terrifying. Upload progress is at 67%, Eric called from his workstation. The quantum encryption is holding, but I'm seeing some unusual network activity in the background traffic. Maya's stomach clenched. What kind of activity? Probing algorithms. Someone's trying to trace our connection. Eric's fingers flew across the keyboard. I'm routing through 17 different proxy servers, but they're sophisticated, government-level sophisticated. The sound of approaching vehicles made them both freeze. Maya moved to the window and peered through the reinforced blinds they'd installed the week before. 3 black SUVs were winding up their access road, moving with the deliberate precision of a military convoy. Time's up, she whispered. How much more do you need? 20 minutes minimum. The quantum tunneling algorithms are complex. If the upload corrupts, years of work disappear. Maya grabbed the emergency bag they'd prepared, stuffing it with backup drives and essential research notes. Keep transmitting. I'll buy us time. She stepped onto the porch as the vehicles formed a semicircle around their cabin. The doors opened simultaneously, disgorging 12 figures in tactical gear. At the center walked a woman in an expensive grey suit, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to absolute authority. Dr. Maya Chen, the woman called out. I'm Director Sarah Whitfield, Department of Energy Special Projects Division. We need to discuss your recent discoveries. Maya kept her hands visible but ready. I wasn't aware we'd made any discoveries worth federal attention. Whitfield smiled, but it never reached her eyes. Your modesty is admirable but unnecessary. We know about the quantum resonance applications you've developed. Technology of that magnitude requires proper oversight. Oversight, Maya repeated. Is that what you call armed men surrounding someone's home? A precaution. There are parties interested in your work who don't share our restraint. Whitfield gestured, and her team spread out in practiced formation. We're here to ensure your research remains in responsible hands." Through the cabin's walls, Maya could hear Eric still typing frantically. The upload had to be close to completion by now. She needed to keep Whitfield talking. "What exactly do you think we've discovered?" "Please, Dr. Chen, your quantum tunneling applications could revolutionize energy transmission. Imagine clean power distributed instantly across any distance, no infrastructure required. That technology could destabilize entire industries, topple governments. It cannot remain in private hands." Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Whitfield understood the implications better than most. "And if we refuse to cooperate?" "I prefer not to discuss unpleasant alternatives. Your partner, Dr. Larson, has an excellent reputation. It would be unfortunate if questions arose about the source of your funding, the legality of your research, potential safety violations." The threat hung between them like a blade. Maya realized this woman could destroy their lives with a few phone calls, bury them in legal challenges and bureaucratic investigations until their resources ran dry and their credibility evaporated. A subtle vibration from her phone indicated Eric's success. The upload was complete. "You're assuming we've actually achieved something significant," Maya said carefully. "What if our research is just theoretical speculation?" Whitfield's expression hardened. "Dr. Chen, we have satellite data showing energy readings from this location that shouldn't be possible with conventional technology. We know about your power generation levels, your mysteriously efficient systems. The evidence is conclusive." One of the tactical team members approached Whitfield, whispering urgently in her ear. The director's face darkened. "It seems you've been busy this afternoon," Whitfield said. "Large data transmissions, multiple international connections. That was unwise." Maya's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. "I don't know what you mean." "The upload is already being traced and contained. Did you really think we weren't monitoring your communications?" Whitfield nodded to her team. "Secure the premises. Bring Dr. Larson out here." Heavy boots crossed the porch behind Maya. She heard Eric's voice raised in protest, the crash of equipment being overturned. When they dragged him outside, his shirt was torn and blood trickled from his nose, but his eyes held a fierce satisfaction that Whitfield couldn't see. "The research belongs in proper hands," Whitfield continued. "You'll be compensated fairly and relocated to a secure facility where your work can continue under appropriate supervision. Consider it a promotion to a project with unlimited resources and national importance." Maya looked at Eric, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his battered face. They'd spent years building a life of freedom, pursuing knowledge for its own sake rather than profit or power. Now they faced a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. The satellite phone crackled to life at dawn, jolting Maya from an uneasy sleep beside the dying embers of their campfire. Eric grabbed the device, his face grim as he recognized the encrypted number. "We found something," came the voice of Dr. Sarah Chen, their former colleague at the Renewable Energy Lab. "Maya's research files, the ones from before you left Silicon Valley. Someone's been accessing them." Maya leaned closer, her heart racing. "That's impossible. I deleted everything when we left." "Not everything. The backup servers at the university still had fragments, patent applications, preliminary data on your biomimetic energy cells. Someone with serious resources has been piecing it together." Eric's jaw tightened. The energy cells Maya had developed weren't just theoretical anymore. They'd built a working prototype into their cabin's foundation, drawing power from the Earth's natural electromagnetic field in ways that could revolutionize clean energy. But they'd chosen isolation over publication, sensing the technology was too disruptive for a world controlled by oil and gas giants. "Who's accessing it?" Maya whispered. "Meridian Industries. Ring any bells?" The name hit Maya like a physical blow. Meridian was one of the largest energy conglomerates in North America, with tentacles reaching into government contracts and military applications. If they'd connected her old research to what she and Eric had actually built. "Sarah, you need to destroy those files. All of them." Already tried. The university won't let me near them without proper authorization, and someone's flagged your name in the system. Maya, there's more. Satellite imagery shows unmarked vehicles in your area. They're closing in. Eric was already breaking down their camp, his movements swift and practiced. 3 days of running had honed their survival instincts, but Maya could see the exhaustion in his shoulders, the way his hands shook slightly as he packed their meager supplies. "The cabin," Maya said suddenly. "If Meridian has my research, they'll figure out what we built. They'll try to take it apart, reverse engineer everything." "Let them," Eric replied, shouldering his pack. "The house is gone anyway." "No, you don't understand." Maya's mind raced through the implications. The energy cells aren't just in the foundation, they're networked throughout the entire structure, drawing from underground mineral veins, root systems, even mycorrhizal networks in the soil. If they start excavating without understanding the delicate balance. She trailed off, remembering the day they'd first activated the system. The house had hummed with life, every surface warm to the touch, lead strips glowing without any visible power source. But there had been something else, a moment when the energy output had spiked beyond anything her calculations predicted, as if the technology had somehow interfaced with the living ecosystem itself. "What aren't you telling me?" Eric stopped walking, studying her face. Maya hesitated. In all their planning and building, she'd never mentioned the anomalous readings, the way the system seemed to draw not just from electromagnetic fields, but from something deeper, the bioelectric currents of the forest itself. She'd convinced herself it was a measurement error, unwilling to acknowledge they might have stumbled onto something far more significant than clean energy. The last night in the cabin, when the power grid went down, she began slowly. "Our system didn't just keep running, it got stronger, as if it was feeding off the forest's response to stress." Eric's eyes widened. "You think it's actually interfacing with living systems?" "I think we accidentally created something that can tap into the electrical networks that plants and fungi use to communicate, and if Meridian gets their hands on it." The implications hung between them like a toxic cloud: military applications, ecological disruption, the ability to literally drain the life force from entire ecosystems to power industrial operations. A distant rumble made them both freeze. Helicopters, still miles away but approaching fast. "The old mine shaft," Eric said, pointing toward a barely visible trail leading up the mountainside. "We can lose them in the tunnels." They ran through the pre-dawn darkness, branches whipping at their faces as they climbed. Maya's lungs burned, but her mind kept racing through possible solutions. Even if they escaped, even if they disappeared completely, someone else would eventually recreate her work. The theoretical foundations were sound, and with enough resources, Meridian could build their own prototype within months. As they reached the abandoned mine entrance, Maya made a decision that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I have to go back," she gasped, leaning against the weathered timber frame. "Are you insane?" "Not to the cabin, to the university. If I can access my old files, modify the data before Meridian gets everything." She met his eyes, seeing her own desperation reflected there. "I can poison the well, make it impossible for them to replicate the biointerface component." The helicopter sounds grew louder, echoing off the valley walls. "Then we do it together," Eric said, taking her hand as they plunged into the darkness of the tunnel. Behind them, searchlights began sweeping the forest, hunting for the two people who held the key to either humanity's sustainable future or its final exploitation of the natural world. The abandoned ranger station sat like a weathered sentinel against the darkening sky, its windows boarded and paint peeling in long strips. Maya crouched behind a fallen log 50 yards away, her heart hammering as she watched Eric circle the building's perimeter. The encrypted drive felt heavy in her jacket pocket, its weight a constant reminder of what they carried and what Blackwood would do to get it back. Eric's hand signal indicated the building was clear, but Maya's instinct screamed otherwise. Something felt wrong about this place, too convenient, too perfectly positioned along their escape route. She'd learned to trust those instincts during their months in the wilderness. and they'd never steered her wrong. A twig snapped somewhere to her left. Maya froze, every muscle tensing as she scanned the tree line. The forest had gone unnaturally quiet, even the evening birdsong cut short. Through the gathering dusk, she caught a glimpse of movement, a figure in tactical gear advancing through the underbrush with practiced stealth. They'd been found. Maya's mind raced through their options. Eric was too far away to signal without exposing her position. The ranger station offered potential shelter, but could easily become a trap. Behind her lay dense forest, but Blackwood's mercenaries likely had thermal imaging and night vision equipment that would make hiding impossible. She made her choice. Moving with the quiet efficiency she'd developed during countless dawn hunts for their dinner, Maya slipped deeper into the woods. Every step was calculated, avoiding dry leaves and brittle branches that might betray her position. The tactical advantage lay in splitting up. If Blackwood's people had to choose between targets, she and Eric might have a chance. The sound of boots on gravel reached her ears. Multiple sets, moving with military precision toward the ranger station where Eric was concealed. Maya's chest tightened with fear for him, but she forced herself to keep moving. Their survival depended on at least one of them reaching the rendezvous point they'd established, a cave system 3 miles north where they'd cached emergency supplies. Through the trees, she saw muzzle flashes and heard the sharp crack of gunfire. Eric was pinned down, but the steady rhythm of return fire told her he was alive and fighting back. Their months of preparation had included weapons training with Jake, the former military contractor who'd helped them understand the true scope of what they were up against. Maya reached into her pack and pulled out the satellite phone Jake had given them for emergencies. Her fingers trembled as she powered it on, praying the signal would reach through the forest canopy. The device showed 2 bars, enough for a brief transmission. She scrolled to the pre-programmed number Jake had insisted she memorize. His voice crackled through the static after 2 rings. "Maya? What's your status?" "Compromised," she whispered. "Ranger station on Forest Road 12, multiple hostiles. Eric's pinned down." "Copy. Help is 20 minutes out. Can you hold position?" 20 minutes felt like an eternity with bullets flying and Eric trapped in a firefight. But before she could respond, a hand clamped over her mouth and the phone was torn from her grasp. Well. Dr. Maya Chen, I presume." The voice belonged to a woman, cool and professional. Maya recognized it from the intercepted communications they'd decoded. Victoria Cross, Blackwood Industries head of security. The woman who'd orchestrated their pursuit across 3 states. "You've led us quite a chase," Cross continued, her grip iron strong despite her slight frame. "But this ends now. The drive, Dr. Chen, where is it?" Maya bit down hard on Cross's hand, tasting blood as the woman cursed and loosened her grip. She broke free and ran, crashing through the underbrush with Cross in pursuit. Behind her, the gunfire at the ranger station had intensified, suggesting reinforcements had arrived. The forest floor pitched downward into a ravine Maya remembered from their earlier scouting. She'd explored this terrain extensively, mapping every game trail and natural landmark within a 10-mile radius of their home. That knowledge might be her only advantage against professionally trained operatives. She leaped across a narrow creek, her boots splashing in the icy water. Cross followed, less familiar with the terrain but maintaining distance through sheer athleticism. Maya's lungs burned as she climbed the opposite bank, branches tearing at her clothes and face. A helicopter's rotors thundered overhead, its spotlight sweeping the forest in wide arcs. They were bringing in air support, turning their escape route into a killing field. Maya realized with crystalline clarity that conventional evasion wouldn't work. She needed to think like the engineer she'd once been, find the systemic weakness in their operation. The spotlight passed over her position, and in that brief illumination she saw her answer. A steep slope ahead led to an area she and Eric had marked as unstable, loose shale over a subsurface creek that had undermined the hillside. Dangerous for hiking, but potentially useful for creating a diversion. Maya pulled the emergency flare from her pack and made a decision that would either save them or get them both killed. Sometimes the only way out was through the chaos you created yourself. She lit the flare and hurled it toward the unstable slope, then ran for cover as the mountain began to move. The dawn light filtered through the cabin's reinforced windows as Maya finished encrypting the last of their research files. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency across the keyboard, years of tech experience guiding her through the complex security protocols. Eric stood watch by the window, his rifle within easy reach, scanning the tree line for any sign of movement. "That's the last of it," Maya said, ejecting the encrypted drive. "Everything's backed up on 3 separate servers, all in different countries. Even if they destroy everything here, the research survives." Eric nodded without taking his eyes off the forest. The morning mist clung to the trees like ghostly fingers, making it impossible to tell if the shadows concealed threats or were simply tricks of light. "How long before your contact can get the word out?" Jessica said she'd have the story ready by noon. "Once it hits the wire services, there's no stopping it." Maya tucked the drive into her jacket pocket. "The question is whether we'll live to see it published." A twig snapped somewhere in the distance, and both of them froze. Eric raised his rifle slightly, finger hovering near the trigger. They waited, hearts pounding, but only silence followed. A squirrel chittered in the oak tree near their solar array, and Eric slowly lowered the weapon. "We can't stay here much longer," he said. "They know where we are, and they'll be back with more people." Maya joined him at the window, her hand finding his free one. "I keep thinking about what Marcus said, about how many people have disappeared because they got too close to something like this. Maybe we should have just walked away." "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Maya's voice carried the weight of sleepless nights and constant fear. "Look at what we've become. We're living like fugitives, armed and paranoid. This isn't the life we came here to build." Eric turned to face her, his weathered features softened by concern. "No, it's not. But it's the life we have right now. And if we don't fight for what we've discovered, no one else will get the chance to build the life we dreamed of either." The satellite phone buzzed, breaking the tension. Maya grabbed it quickly, recognizing Jessica's number. "Tell me you have good news," Maya said. "Better than good. I've got 3 major networks interested, plus the Times and the Post. But Maya, there's something else. I did some digging on Meridian Holdings like you asked." Maya's blood chilled. "What did you find?" "It's worse than we thought. They're not just an investment firm. They've got ties to defense contractors, energy companies, even some government black budget projects. And get this, they've been buying up patents for clean energy technologies for the past 15 years. "Buying them to develop?" Eric asked, leaning in to hear. "Buying them to bury them. Every single patent they've acquired has disappeared from development. The inventors either got paid off to stay quiet or—" Jessica's voice trailed off meaningfully. Maya felt sick. "Or they disappeared like Marcus warned us. There's more. I found records of at least 12 researchers in the past decade whose work was similar to yours. All of them either had fatal accidents or vanished completely after Meridian showed interest in their projects." The weight of that revelation settled over them like a shroud. They weren't just fighting for their discovery. They were fighting for their lives against an organization that had perfected the art of making inconvenient people disappear. "How soon can you publish?" Maya asked urgently. "Give me 2 hours. I want to make sure this is bulletproof before it goes live. Once this story breaks, there's no going back for any of us." Maya understood. By helping them, Jessica was putting herself in the crosshairs too. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Someone has to. Besides, I've got my own insurance policies in place. This story is backed up in more places than your research files." After ending the call, Maya and Eric stood in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they'd learned. Their sustainable energy breakthrough wasn't just valuable. It was dangerous to powerful interests who had spent fortunes suppressing similar technologies. 2 hours, Eric said finally. "We just have to survive 2 more hours." Maya began gathering their essential supplies. Then what? Even after the story breaks, Meridian isn't going to just give up. If anything, they might get more desperate. Then we disappear for a while. Let the media attention protect us until we can figure out our next move. A distant rumble caught their attention. Engines, multiple vehicles approaching from the direction of the main road. Eric grabbed his binoculars and focused on the sound. Black SUVs, he reported grimly, 3 of them, moving fast. Maya's hands flew over her laptop, initiating their emergency protocols. Security systems activated, backup power engaged, and all their research data began transmitting to Jessica's secure servers. Whatever happened next, their work would survive. "Time to go," Eric said, shouldering his pack. The helicopter's rotors had barely stopped spinning when Maya recognized the figure stepping onto their clearing. Senator Patricia Hawthorne emerged from the aircraft with the practiced confidence of someone accustomed to making dramatic entrances. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, and despite the remote location, she wore an immaculate navy suit that somehow hadn't wrinkled during the flight. Eric positioned himself between Maya and the approaching entourage. 3 men in dark suits flanked the senator, their eyes scanning the property with professional thoroughness. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized this wasn't a courtesy visit. "Miss Chen, Mr. Larson," Senator Hawthorne called out, her voice carrying easily across the distance. "I apologize for the unexpected arrival, but circumstances have made this conversation rather urgent." Maya stepped forward, her jaw set. "Senator, I wasn't aware our little homestead warranted such high-level attention." A thin smile played across Hawthorne's lips. "Your modesty is charming, but we both know your little homestead has produced something far more significant than organic vegetables." She gestured toward the cabin, where the bioluminescent panels glowed softly in the late afternoon light. "May I suggest we discuss this inside? The mountain air is lovely, but some conversations require privacy." Eric's hand found Maya's shoulder. "Whatever you want to discuss, we can do it right here." "I'm afraid not." One of the suited men stepped forward, his jacket opening slightly to reveal the weapon beneath. "The senator's time is limited." Maya felt the familiar surge of defiance that had driven her to leave the corporate world behind. Then, she shouldn't have come unannounced to our home. Senator Hawthorne raised a hand, and her security detail stepped back. "Please, I'm not here as an adversary. I'm here because what you've discovered could change the balance of global power, and there are forces at work that neither of you fully understand." Despite every instinct screaming at her to refuse, Maya found herself curious. The senator's tone carried a gravity that went beyond political posturing. 5 minutes, she said finally. Inside the cabin, Senator Hawthorne's eyes immediately went to the glowing panels lining the walls. She approached one slowly, her expression shifting from political calculation to genuine wonder. "Remarkable. The energy output readings our people detected don't do justice to seeing it firsthand." "Your people?" Eric's voice was sharp. "You've been monitoring us?" "Mr. Larson, when a remote location suddenly starts generating enough clean energy to power a small city, it tends to attract attention from various agencies." Hawthorne turned back to face them. "The question is what happens next." Maya crossed her arms. "We've been very clear about our intentions. We want to share this technology freely." "And that's exactly the problem." Senator Hawthorne moved to the window, gazing out at the forest. 3 days ago, satellite imagery of your property was flagged by the Department of Energy. Yesterday, a private military contractor began making inquiries about purchasing land in this area. This morning, I received a call from someone claiming to represent Chinese industrial interests. The room fell silent except for the gentle hum of the bioluminescent organisms. Maya felt the weight of implications settling around her like a heavy blanket. "You're saying we've painted a target on ourselves," Eric said quietly. "I'm saying you've discovered something that could eliminate the need for fossil fuels overnight, and there are trillion-dollar industries that view your breakthrough as an existential threat." Senator Hawthorne's voice carried the weariness of someone who understood how money and power truly operated. The contractor I mentioned, they don't want to license your technology. They want to bury it. Maya sank into one of their handmade chairs, her mind racing. So, what are you proposing? Protection, partnership, a way to ensure your discovery reaches the world without getting you both killed in the process. Senator Hawthorne sat across from her. I chair the Senate Subcommittee on Clean Energy. I have the resources to shield you from corporate interference and the political connections to fast-track your technology through proper channels. In exchange for what? Eric's skepticism was evident. Exclusive licensing through the federal government for the first 5 years. After that, open patents available to any manufacturer who meets environmental and safety standards. Senator Hawthorne leaned forward. It's not perfect, but it's better than watching your life's work disappear into some corporation's vault. Maya looked around their cabin, at the walls that glowed with the promise of a cleaner future, at the life she and Eric had built with their own hands. Everything they'd worked toward hung in the balance. And if we refuse? She asked. Senator Hawthorne's expression grew grim. Then I'll do what I can to protect you, but my influence has limits. These people have resources and reach that extend far beyond government oversight. Through the window, Maya could see storm clouds gathering over the mountains. The peaceful isolation that had allowed their discovery to flourish now felt fragile, threatened by forces she'd never imagined when they'd first followed the mysterious lights into the forest. How long do we have to decide? Eric asked. They're already coming, Senator Hawthorne replied. The question is whether you'll face them alone or with the full weight of the federal government behind you. The pre-dawn darkness felt different now, charged with possibility rather than dread. Maya pressed her eye to the scope Eric had jury-rigged from salvaged camera parts, watching the valley below through the cabin's reinforced window. 3 black SUVs sat motionless near the tree line, their occupants likely assuming Maya and Eric were still trapped, still helpless. They had no idea about the tunnel. Eric emerged from the hidden entrance behind their woodpile, brushing dirt from his jacket. The escape route they'd spent months digging as a just-in-case precaution had finally proven its worth. He carried the prototype in a weatherproof case, along with all their research files stored on encrypted drives. The path to the old mining road is clear, he whispered, settling beside her. But we need to move soon. Once the sun comes up, they'll have aerial support. Maya nodded, her mind racing through their desperate plan. Getting to town wasn't enough. Blackwood's people had already demonstrated their reach there. They needed something bigger, more public. The environmental summit in Denver was their best shot, but first they had to survive the next few hours. A soft chime from Eric's modified radio made them both freeze. The frequency was one only a handful of people knew about. Marcus, their former colleague who'd helped them disappear when Blackwood first came hunting. Package delivery service, came the coded voice. Special pickup available at the old drop zone. Maya's heart leaped. Marcus had come through. The old drop zone was the abandoned fire tower 20 miles north, far enough from Blackwood's search perimeter to matter. Eric was already moving, shouldering the pack containing their life's work. They'd rehearsed this evacuation dozens of times, but rehearsal felt nothing like the real thing. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every sound might signal discovery. They slipped out through the tunnel's exit, emerging into the forest 50 yards from their cabin. Maya carried only essentials, water, energy bars, and the backup drives containing proof of what Blackwood Industries had tried to bury. Their revolutionary energy storage system wasn't just an environmental breakthrough, it was evidence of corporate murder and conspiracy that reached the highest levels of government. The forest floor was treacherous in the darkness, but they moved with the confidence of 2 people who'd spent years learning every root and rock. Behind them, the cabin sat dark and silent, rigged with enough surprises to buy them precious time when Blackwood's people finally moved in. 2 miles into their hike, Eric suddenly grabbed Maya's arm. Voices carried through the trees, a search team moving parallel to their route. They pressed themselves against a massive pine, barely breathing as flashlight beams swept the undergrowth nearby. "Should have moved hours ago," someone was saying. "If they slip away again, they won't." The second voice was cold, professional. "We've got eyes on every road, every trail. The only way out is through us." Maya felt Eric's hand find hers in the darkness. They waited until the voices faded before continuing, adjusting their route to avoid the patrol pattern they'd just discovered. The old fire tower came into view as the eastern sky began to lighten. Maya spotted Marcus immediately, still tall and lanky, still moving with the nervous energy that had made him such a brilliant programmer. His helicopter sat in the clearing like a metal insect, rotors already turning. "Thought you two might need a ride," Marcus called over the engine noise as they ran toward him. "Denver's got some very interested parties waiting to hear your story." Maya felt a surge of hope as they climbed aboard. Through the helicopter's window, she could see their valley spread out below, the cabin they'd built with their own hands, the solar arrays and wind turbines that had started everything, the gardens where they'd learned to grow their own food. It looked peaceful from up here, beautiful even. There, Eric pointed toward the forest. Black-clad figures were surrounding their cabin, moving with military precision. Smoke began rising from the structure moments later. Maya watched Blackwood's people destroy everything they'd built, but the anger she expected didn't come. Instead, she felt a strange sense of liberation. They'd proven their technology worked. They'd gathered the evidence needed to expose Blackwood's crimes. Most importantly, they'd survived long enough to share their discovery with the world. "The summit starts in 6 hours, Marcus said through the headset. "Senator Richardson has agreed to give you a platform. Environmental groups, media, government watchdogs, they'll all be there." Eric squeezed Maya's hand as their valley disappeared behind them. "No going back now." Maya smiled, thinking of all the people who would benefit from clean, abundant energy. "I wouldn't want to." The helicopter banked toward Denver, carrying them toward the most important presentation of their lives. The helicopter's rotors churned the morning air as Maya watched it disappear over the tree line, taking Senator Richardson and his promises with it. Eric stood beside her, his hand finding hers as the sound faded into the distance, leaving only the familiar whisper of wind through pine needles. "Think he'll keep his word?" Eric asked, his voice carrying the weight of everything they'd endured. Maya squeezed his fingers. "We'll know soon enough." She turned toward their cabin, surveying the damage. Broken windows caught the early sunlight like fractured mirrors, and deep gouges in the solar panels told the story of the previous night's violence. But the structure stood, and more importantly, so did they. Dr. Chen emerged from behind the workshop, brushing dirt from her jacket. "The prototype is intact," she announced, relief evident in her voice. "Hartwell's men were more interested in destroying your research than understanding it." "Lucky for us," Maya replied, though she wondered how long that luck would hold. Richardson had promised protection, but politicians were notorious for changing their minds when convenient. Eric was already examining the damaged equipment, his engineer's mind, cataloguing what could be salvaged. "The main array took a beating, but the core components are fine. We could have everything operational again within a week. Assuming we're left alone to work," Maya said, unable to shake her unease. A distant rumble caught their attention. Chen tensed, her hand moving instinctively toward the encrypted drive in her pocket. But instead of black SUVs, a familiar pickup truck emerged from the forest road. Jake climbed out, his weathered face creased with concern. "Saw the helicopter," he said without preamble. "Government types?" "Something like that," Maya replied. She'd grown to trust their nearest neighbor over the past months, but some secrets were still too dangerous to share completely. Jake nodded, understanding the unspoken boundaries. "Well, if you need anything while you're fixing this place up, just holler. Town's been buzzing with stories about corporate security crawling around. Most folks didn't much like the looks of them." After Jake left, they spent the day assessing the full extent of the damage. The house systems were repairable, but it would take time and money they didn't have much of. More concerning was the psychological toll. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every unexpected sound made them freeze. As evening approached, Chen prepared to leave for the city. Her contacts at the university had arranged secure transport, and she carried copies of all their research data. "This will be published within 48 hours, she promised. "Once it's in the scientific community's hands, there's no stopping it." "And if Hartwell's people try to interfere?" Eric asked. "They can't suppress every journal, every researcher, every university simultaneously. The genie will be out of the bottle." Chen paused at the door. "What you've built here, it's going to change everything. Energy independence, environmental restoration, economic disruption on a massive scale. There will be powerful interests trying to control or destroy this technology. Stay vigilant." After she left, Maya and Eric sat on their damaged porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. The silence felt different now, charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. "Do you regret it?" Maya asked, "leaving everything behind to come here?" Eric considered the question. "A few days ago, I might have said yes, when those men were pointing guns at us, when it looked like we might lose everything." He gestured toward the forest surrounding them. "But this place, this life, what we've discovered, it's exactly what we were looking for when we left the city. We just didn't know it would come with such a high price." Maya leaned against his shoulder. Richardson seemed genuine, but politicians have their own agendas, and Hartwell's still out there somewhere. Maybe. But Chen's right. Once the research is public, the game changes. We won't be the only ones who know the secret anymore. A soft chime from Eric's phone interrupted the quiet. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "Unknown number." Maya's muscles tensed. "Don't answer it." But Eric was already looking at the message. His expression shifted from wariness to surprise. "It's from Richardson's office. They're fast-tracking our patent applications and offering federal research grants." He looked up at Maya. "This is real money. Enough to rebuild everything and fund proper development. Or enough to make us dependent on government support," Maya countered. "What happens when the next administration decides our technology threatens their energy sector donors?" They sat in contemplative silence as the night deepened around them. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called to its mate, a sound that had become as familiar as their own heartbeats. Whatever came next, government oversight, corporate interference, or scientific acclaim, this place had become their anchor. The revolutionary discovery that had nearly cost them everything was about to become humanity's inheritance. Whether that would prove to be a gift or a curse remained to be seen. The helicopter's rotors cut through the morning air like a metallic heartbeat, growing louder as it approached their valley. Maya pressed her face against the cabin window, watching the aircraft circle once before settling into the clearing beside their home. Dust and debris swirled in all directions as the engine wound down. "That's not Marcus," Eric said, joining her at the window. His voice carried the weight of 3 sleepless nights spent preparing for this moment. 2 figures emerged from the helicopter, a woman in a crisp navy suit and a man carrying what appeared to be surveying equipment. Neither looked like the corporate security team they'd been expecting since Marcus had warned them about Zenith Industries' final play. Maya's hand found the encrypted drive in her pocket, the one containing every detail of their energy breakthrough, the same breakthrough that had transformed their off-grid dream into a nightmare of corporate espionage and threats. They'd made the decision last night. If Zenith wanted their research buried, they'd have to bury Maya and Eric with it. "Dr. Chen? Dr. Larson?" the woman called out as she approached their porch, her heels impractical for the rough terrain. "I'm Director Sarah Walsh from the Department of Energy. This is my colleague, Dr. James Morrison." Eric stepped outside first, positioning himself slightly in front of Maya. "We weren't expecting government visitors." Director Walsh smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We need to discuss your work on quantum energy harvesting. Specifically, we need to discuss how to protect it." Maya felt her pulse quicken. Either this was an elaborate ruse by Zenith, or their situation had just become exponentially more complicated. She stepped forward, studying the woman's credentials when they were offered. 3 days ago, Walsh continued, we intercepted communications suggesting that Zenith Industries has marked you both as threats to national security. They've convinced certain parties that your technology could destabilize global energy markets. Could it? Dr. Morrison asked, speaking for the first time. His tone suggested genuine scientific curiosity rather than interrogation. Maya and Eric exchanged glances. They'd had versions of this conversation in their own minds countless times since perfecting the quantum harvesting array hidden beneath their cabin. The technology could theoretically provide unlimited clean energy, Maya said carefully. But we never intended it for mass production. We just wanted to live sustainably. Walsh nodded slowly. Zenith doesn't see it that way. They see a threat to a trillion-dollar industry. More concerning, they have connections in the defense sector who view uncontrolled energy technology as a potential weapon. Eric's jaw tightened. It's not a weapon. It's barely powerful enough to run our household systems. But it's scalable, Morrison observed. The quantum principles you've harnessed could theoretically be amplified. The admission hung in the air like smoke. Maya realized they'd reached the moment she'd been dreading, the point where their innocent attempt at self-sufficiency became something larger and more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. What does the government want from us? Maya asked. Walsh opened her briefcase and withdrew a thick folder. Protection, oversight, and partnership. We're offering you a research position at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. Full funding, unlimited resources, and most importantly, security from corporate interests. And if we refuse? Eric's voice was steady, but Maya could see the tension in his shoulders. Then you remain targets, Walsh said simply. Zenith has already filed preliminary injunctions claiming patent infringement on theoretical energy systems. They're building a legal case to seize your property and research. Maya pulled the encrypted drive from her pocket, turning it over in her palm. Such a small thing to cause such enormous problems. They can't patent theoretical work. They can try, Morrison said, and they have enough lawyers to make the process take years. Years during which you'll be fighting legal battles instead of living your life. A red-tailed hawk circled overhead, its cry piercing the tension below. Maya watched it soar effortlessly above their valley, free in a way she and Eric might never be again. We need time to consider your offer, Eric said. Walsh checked her watch. You have until tomorrow morning. Our intelligence suggests Zenith's next move happens within 48 hours. What kind of move? Maya asked, though part of her didn't want to know. The kind that doesn't involve lawyers, Walsh replied grimly. After the helicopter departed, Maya and Eric sat on their porch in silence, watching the sun climb higher over the mountains they'd chosen as their sanctuary. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. They'd fled the corporate world to find peace, only to discover that true innovation, even pursued in isolation, inevitably drew the attention of those who feared change. Maya fingered the drive one last time before looking at Eric. We never did get that simple life we planned. Eric reached for her hand. Maybe simple was never really an option. In the distance, another aircraft appeared on the horizon, too far away to identify but close enough to remind them that their time for deciding was running out. The morning sun filtered through the canopy as Maya stood on the deck of their rebuilt home, watching the last of the government vehicles disappear down the mountain road. The silence that followed felt different from the oppressive quiet of the past months. This was peaceful, earned. Eric emerged from the house carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee, the aroma mixing with the crisp mountain air. Senator Williams just called, he said, settling beside her on the bench they'd built together. The energy bill passed committee. Our open-source designs will be protected under federal law. Maya accepted the mug gratefully, wrapping her fingers around its warmth. Hard to believe it's really over. Is it, though? Eric asked, not with worry but with genuine curiosity. I mean, the immediate threat is gone, but what we've started... She knew what he meant. In the 3 weeks since Blackstone's arrest and Hammond's testimony had blown open the conspiracy, their email inbox had been flooded with messages from engineers, environmental groups, and governments around the world. The simple, sustainable technologies they'd developed in their wilderness retreat were spreading faster than they'd ever imagined possible. "Dr. Chen called yesterday," Maya said. "The prototype installations in rural Kenya are exceeding all expectations. They want to scale up to 50 more villages by next year." Eric smiled, remembering the soft-spoken engineer who'd been among the first to reach out after their story went public. "And what about that university consortium in Norway?" "Funding approved. They're calling it the Maya Eric Institute for Sustainable Innovation." She shook her head in amazement. "I still can't wrap my head around that." A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermal currents with effortless grace. Maya watched it, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. 2 years ago, they'd fled the corporate world seeking simplicity, wanting nothing more than to live in harmony with the natural world around them. They'd never intended to change anything beyond their own lives. "Any regrets?" Eric asked, following her gaze skyward. Maya considered the question seriously. The past months had been terrifying, the surveillance, the sabotage, the very real threat to their lives. But they'd also been transformative in ways she was still processing. About leaving our old jobs, about building this place, about fighting back. She shook her head. "No regrets." "What about you?" "Only one," Eric said, and Maya turned to look at him with concern. "I wish we'd documented everything better from the beginning. Think about all the failed experiments, all the iterations we went through. That knowledge could help other people avoid our mistakes." Maya laughed, the sound carrying across the clearing. "Eric, you're already thinking about the next project." "Actually," he said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket, "I've been thinking about something Sarah mentioned. She said there are other inventors out there, other people who've made breakthroughs that powerful interests want suppressed. What if we created a platform, a protected space where they could share their work without fear?" Maya took the paper, unfolding it to reveal sketches and notes in Eric's familiar handwriting. A decentralized network, resistant to corporate or government interference, designed to keep innovative ideas flowing freely. "The Hammond Foundation offered to fund it," Eric continued. "Seems William wants to make amends for his father's actions by supporting exactly the kind of work Blackstone tried to destroy." Before Maya could respond, the sound of an approaching engine drew their attention. A familiar pickup truck emerged from the tree line, Jim's truck, but with Sarah behind the wheel. She parked near the house and climbed out, waving as she approached. "Hope I'm not interrupting," she called. "I brought news." They made room for her on the bench, and Sarah's expression grew serious. "The investigation into Blackstone's network is expanding. They've found evidence of suppressed patents going back decades, clean water technologies, medical devices, agricultural innovations, stuff that could have changed millions of lives." "How much of it is recoverable?" Maya asked. "Most of it, and that's where you two come in." Sarah turned to face them directly. "They want you to head up a task force. Your job would be to evaluate the suppressed technologies, update them with current knowledge, and release them into the public domain." Eric and Maya exchanged a look, one of those wordless conversations that couples who'd weathered storms together could have. "We'd still live here?" Maya asked. "Absolutely. Remote work, flexible schedule, full autonomy over which projects you pursue." Maya stood and walked to the railing, looking out over the forest that had become their sanctuary. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear the gentle hum of their systems, solar collectors tracking the sun, water cycling through their purification system, the quiet efficiency of technologies that had started as simple attempts at self-sufficiency. "Eric," she said without turning around, "remember what you told me when we first came here? About wanting to make sure our work outlived us?" "I remember." She turned back to face him, her decision clear in her eyes. "I think this is how we do that." Eric stood and joined her at the railing, Sarah watching them both with a knowing smile. "So we're doing this?" he asked. Maya nodded, feeling the weight and promise of the path ahead. We're doing this.